Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Cat B Making Connections Possible show. I'm coming to you from the UK, but we've got Samia, who's transatlantic in the USA. Samia, welcome to the show. Tell everybody who you are and a little bit about your story.
Hi, Kat. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Samia. I'm in Boise, Idaho. I'm a mother, a writer, an advocate, and primarily just a seeker.
Amazing. You've got an incredible daughter. Tell everybody about Maisa and what she's like as a person.
My daughter is Maisa. We're coming up on the 16-year anniversary of her birth into her earthly body and the second year anniversary of her transition to spirit. She is a radiant being full of light. Mesa the human was sensitive, she came into the world connected. Um, Her human personality, she marched to the beat of her own drum. She loved nature, outdoors, space, family, reading, math and science, Harry Potter,
She's quite a creative.
very creative art. She was always teaching me things, and she continues to teach me just in a different way.
Amazing. Tell me a little bit about what happened to Maisa, Samia, because she was born a sensitive child. Sensitive children tend to be deep processors, highly creative, a little bit reserved sometimes, enjoy their own private experiences. They can be very intuitive, very creative. They like their own space sometimes. Is that the kind of person that Maisa was, Samia?
Yes, that's exactly how she was. She very much liked her own space. She needed her own processing time because she felt things deeply. And
Did she tend to get overwhelmed by things?
yes, and that is the nature of a lot of sensitive children. They feel things different. They perceive the world differently, maybe, than a lot of people around them. Just everything is more.
The sound is more, noise is more, they pick up on other people's feelings and therefore they're natural empaths in some ways. And so actually having their own space or being able to stand back is important to them because they need to be able to process. It's almost as if they're a high vibrational being, isn't it? And then when they come into contact with lots of activity in the atmosphere, they find it hard to manage.
Exactly. Just the dial is turned up. And exactly like you're saying, the light's more, the smell is more, the sound is more. And so just everything is overwhelming. They go out, and the way that they interact with the environment is different. So they go out into the world and everything is just more. And so they need more time to recuperate. And nature just is soothing and healing. But if you go into, say, the supermarket, that is overwhelming. It's too much. So they need time to themselves, or say the school environment can be too much. The bells, the people, the smells, the cafeteria, the banging. It's a lot for a child like that and can be overwhelming. So what we would see is she would come home and just need time to herself, or towards the end of her life, maybe when she went to school, she would take a hoodie and put it up. And it was a literal, like, trying to shield herself from the sensory overwhelm of that type of environment because it was too much.
Reactive to energy.
Yes. And, people don't think of it that way as an energy, but it is the same thing that makes us perceive the light as too bright, is the same thing that allows us to perceive subtle energy. It's the same mechanism.
How was she socially and how was she interacting with other people? Was she kind of good on a one-to-one with friends, or did she enjoy some group situations, but they had to be kind of managed or kind of balanced with time alone?
She's struggled. I would say she struggled socially because she struggled to find people that saw the world the same way that she did. And she was always looking for that social connection, but she found it hard because she would think and feel very deeply, and often in a way that was different from her peers, especially as she approached puberty. And that's kind of where things started to get very hard for her. And she just happened to hit puberty around the same time as COVID. So what happened for us was we had COVID, everything closed down. And I have two boys also, and Mesa was our middle child. And during COVID, we were all together. So we had kind of our little family pod, and that was fine. And during that time, we're in Idaho and we have a lot of outdoor space. So our family did a lot of camping and hiking and outdoors and nature, and school was shut down. And then it was time to go back to school, and the social groups had changed. Girls were going through puberty. And there was very much this, wait a second, the social dynamics are different. Girls are interested in boys and fashion, and there's drama, and there's these social cliques, but I still want to do camping and nature and look at the stars. And why have the social rules changed?
Wow. She had almost this period where she had life the way that she wanted, and she had this kind of quiet downtime, which was very in line with her personality. She then goes back to school, and that must be a big thing after having this cocooned experience for a sensitive child. And then the contrast of going back, and then the dynamics at school have even moved on and changed further. And so nothing feels familiar, everything feels overwhelming, and there's no comfort zone. She can't find her feet.
Exactly. And that with the extreme polarization among the adults, everyone's shouting at each other about masks, no masks, vaccines, no vaccines. The adults don't don't have it together. So there's very much this kind of like destabilization where who do you look to for guidance if you're a sensitive child, and like your whole world order is turned upside down because she went from a carefree child to realizing that nothing was really like how she thought it was. Like the adults that were running the world weren't really who she thought they were, because they weren't who they were yelling and screaming at each other about things that at the end of the day maybe weren't that important, because in her mind we should all be taking care of each other. Why are we yelling and screaming about masks? Why are we yelling and scream? She could had an uncanny ability to just kind of see through things, and her pattern recognition, and spot hypocrisy like a lot of other sensitive children, and very sensitive to injustices in the world, and just couldn't understand why people weren't taking care of each other and why things were the way that they were. And it really bothered her. A lot of her issues were existential.
Did she like order, Samia? And so did she find it very unordered after COVID?
I don't know if I think she was fine with chaos. A little bit. I guess it depends on how you define order. She was fine with mess, like very messy, like go outside and get messy and dirty. When I would pick her up from preschool, she would say, "Wait a second, Mom, I haven't gotten muddy," and go get really dirty. Like she was a mess in that way. But she had a phrase that she would use, and she would call things social norms and social constructs she didn't understand. So some things had to make sense to her for her to follow them. So if something didn't make sense, she didn't understand it. Like, why did girls do this and why do boys do that? Or why is it this way? And who decided? And she would really analyze.
She's looking for reasoning and rationale. So actually quite left brain. She's looking for logic, rationale. She wants to understand the world. She wants to make sure there's equality. She doesn't understand why boys and girls are treated differently.
And why kids and adults are treated differently too. Why do I have to do this if you don't? And she would really call out rules that didn't make sense.
Okay. So how many weeks or months into returning after COVID did the problems start, Samia? And what did they look like?
I would say probably pretty soon after returning to school, she just seemed more kind of withdrawn and not her free-spirited self. And when we would talk to teachers or therapists or doctors or whoever we asked, my husband and I, we would get kind of like, oh, That's normal. That's what happens when you approach the teenage years. They get like that. They get sulky, they get grumpy, they get, that's part of the transition to adulthood.
So nobody around you who knew your child as well as you, in terms of the teachers that were familiar with her, recognized her to be anything other than normal teenage puberty. They just thought it was the hormones and a normal processing during that period. Is that correct? So in terms of support, nobody's really there raising red flags or identifying any issues. That must have been really scary then. So when the situation starts to evolve, Amia, were there any red flags at all?
I mean, as a mother, I knew, like, this isn't my child. Like, she's withdrawing. Everyone around me said this is how teenage girls act. So then, kind of out of the blue, she attempts suicide. The signs that we saw before that were just kind of, most people would say this is could fall in the category of normal teenage behavior. My husband and I were both like, what could have caused this? This seems extreme based on even the things that we were seeing at home. My husband and I are both attorneys. We researched everything. We went down every rabbit hole and we found research on the high suicide rate in autism without intellectual disability, as well as descriptions of what autism looks like in females. And we thought this fits. Not only does and ADHD in females, not only does it fit for her, it fits for me. No providers around us believed us, even with evidence. They were, oh, she has friends, she makes eye contact. That's not her. They diagnosed her with major depressive disorder. We spent the next 6 months trying to get her help, trying to get her support from the school, me telling her as her mother, there's nothing wrong with you. You have a beautiful, unique brain that's just wired differently. You see the world differently. This explains, my life also. I believe I've been misdiagnosed for the past 30 years by providers who don't understand me either. We'll figure this out together. And she died by suicide 6 months later. We were unable to get her help or support. That's the human story from
Did anybody diagnose her, Samia? Did anybody, after you pushed for a further review, nobody took
No, no, but I believe so strongly. Mesa's my mini me. We're so much alike. And I believe so strongly that I pursued my own diagnosis after her death. And I found someone who diagnosed me with autism and ADHD because the way that it presents in females is so different. It explained my lifelong migraines, my sensory sensitivities, things that look like depression, but were actually burnout. Every time I was called depressed,
because
I was
sensitive children process deeper, and so their thinking is more evolved in some way. Is that right?
yes, and a lot of it comes just sensory overwhelm, and the sensory overwhelm can look like anxiety. Like at the end of the day, just from being in the school environment and the bells and people touching you, and then kind of just
How was she with touch, and how are you with touch? Did you like to be hugged?
I do, but my family and people I'm close to, but it depends. And for her, it depended also. If I'm kind of at my limit, then I need to retreat. And something that I didn't realize about myself until I went down this road with her is at the end of the day, I when I'm grumpy after dinner, when I'm doing dishes, it's not because I'm an angry person, it's because I'm overwhelmed. Like I've reached my sensory limit for the day. I don't need more. There's not really anything I can do to get more patience. I can't force it with the cognitive behavioral therapy, which is kind of what most therapists would tell me to do. I need to go into another room, close the door, remove sensory input, and just rest for a little bit. And I've spent most of my life kind of blowing through my sensory limits without knowing that about myself.
Can I
That would have
ask, now that you know the diagnosis for yourself, do you follow a different routine or pattern to enable yourself to decompress?
absolutely can feel when, I mean, it's both. Um, empowering, and it's still hard because I know I can't push through that. So when I can feel, oh, I'm starting to get overwhelmed, I know I have to go remove sensory input. Otherwise, I'm going to have a problem. I'm going to be overwhelmed. I'm going to get a migraine. I'm going to snap at somebody. I'm going to have to rest for 3 days. I'm going to be past my limit, and I'm going to pay a price for it. There's not really anything I can do to make my sensory limit different. But the flip side of that is the sensitivity is
It's
al-
beautiful.
it's what allows me to perceive subtle energies. It needs to be cultivated. And the fact that the rest of the world has told me or told Mesa to tell sensitive people in general to suppress that is harmful. It's traumatizing. It's, it leads to misdiagnoses, mental health problems, people being wrongly pathologized when these sensitive people need to have the sensitivity cultivated, understood, know how to support themselves because it's something that the world desperately needs, in my opinion.
I have a sensitive child. I was a sensitive, and that's how I'm able to do the work that I do, Samia. So I totally understand where you're coming from, and I understand that need to. I can be very sociable and I can be very bright and loud and vibrant when I'm with people, but I do need the opposite. Once I've had that sensory overload, I need to be able to withdraw. And people are often very surprised that I live a very quiet, calm life in my home. But in order to cope with all the energy and the work that I do in terms of trauma and meeting, grief every day, and welcoming it through my door in order to support other people. I have to have that quietness and that calmness at home. And my daughter's also that way, but sensitive children tend to be highly intelligent students and people as well. So the sensitivity is beautiful because they tend to be very kind and loving. They love animals, they love nature, like you said. They're very perceptive, very intelligent. They can learn at a very rapid rate, I find. And they are like sponges. They will just literally take information and it makes them very articulate, very clever. And often it's interesting. It's like with my daughter, as she also needs downtime, but she absolutely adores knowledge. She is like a sponge who just loves and tends to like sports that are individual. So she loves rowing. She will play netball and ball games, but she prefers individual sports. And it's really interesting. I find that people perceive that sensitivity differently. And there's a really beautiful quote from a famous comedian over here in the UK, Samia, called Rowan Atkinson. He's Mr. Bean to most of the viewers watching. But Rowan Atkinson has a lovely quote where he's a very sensitive person. And he said, why does the world say that we have to be loud? Why can't we just, I don't go around saying you're too loud. So why are people saying I'm too quiet? I'm too sensitive? like what is that? And I think sensitive people find it rude that actually, why can't they just be who they are? Why can't they just be? And let's accept that we're all different. Let's accept that sensitivity is a beautiful thing. Sensitive children tend to have high levels of compassion, empathy, very kind and generous to their friends and the people around them. And so I think it's really interesting how in society we tend to think this loudness or the brashness or the vibrancy of people is what we anticipate. And if people aren't acting extremely sociably, one thing my daughter was pulled up with is she likes time in the library. She likes to do. I don't make her go to the library. She loves reading. And so her behavior can be sometimes different to that of her peer group. She has a great amount of friends. She's very popular, but like your daughter, she likes periods of loud and lively, and then she likes to retract. And so it's very interesting how society perceives it and push it down. And of course, yours has gone a stage further. You've actually found out that you're neurodiverse, which is an umbrella term for many different situations like ADHD and it's very clear to me that you suspect that Mesa was the same, and yet it's not recognized and it's not diagnosed, and you've had at least 6 months of a red flag there with doctors, therapists, all sorts of individuals fighting against that diagnosis. So, what would you say to parents that are listening or people that are listening that have gone through the kind of situation you've gone through, Samuel? Is there anything you would have done different knowing what you know now? Or is that a really difficult sort of question to ask because the situation is so painful?
Oh gosh, I have a lot of thoughts on 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 this. First, like the labels when we're talking, because I know a lot of parents are afraid of, I don't want to label my child. Like, why would I go down this road of labeling? So I want to address just in general, like the labels, if we're whatever it is, if highly sensitive child, autistic, ADHD, neurodiverse. So when we're talking about neurodiversity, I think it's important to think about, what are we diverging from? Like, what is neuronormativity, and who decides? Who's who decides? Who's deciding what is normal? And that's who has the power. And when you are looking at a label, it can be used as a tool, like a lens to help understand something. And it can also be, a cage. It can be used to put someone in a box, to other someone, to pathologize. So what's the label for? Now, when we were trying to help Mesa and we came across autism, for us and for me, it was a lens through which I understood my life. It helped me make sense of something. It answered the why question, like, oh my gosh, like all these pieces finally make sense, and why she would do something that seems so extreme for no reason. Like, this made sense. It was a lens to help me understand something. And for other parents, it can help possibly understand your brain, your child's brain, help you accommodate yourself. Like, it helps me understand, like, oh, I mean, I don't have social anxiety. This isn't something I can push through. I have sensory issues. I need to accommodate those. I can't, this isn't something I can, override. And it is a lens, the labels, which are imperfect. I think these are imperfect labels. I don't think they are right by any means. The language we have is very limiting, but it's a lens through which I can understand myself. So that's the advice I have, is to kind of approach the information that's available with curiosity and an open mind. And it might be a lens through which you can understand your behavior or your child's behavior. Behaviors usually communicating a need. If a child's doing something, they're communicating. They're communicating. If they're shutting down and they can't speak, or if they're overwhelmed about something, they're communicating. Words aren't, I mean, we use words and language, but that's not the only way to communicate, as you
Yeah,
know.
with sensitive children,
Uh,
they're perceiving different things,
yeah, and
picking up
there
things intuitively and reacting to that intuition.
and it's hard, especially for sensitive children, when they perceive things that they're not having their way of being in the world reflected back by the adults and other people around them. Like, they may smell colors or see music. And when the people around them are reflecting something different back, that's disorienting for them.
So do you think we don't meet them, we don't level?
I think sensitive children are very often dismissed. And a lot of that is, we're in a hurry all the time. Our world is so fast paced. We're like, oh, what are you talking about? Oh, that's not true. Oh, that didn't happen. But for them, it did. For them, their experience is very real. And they need adults or other people who will just be curious about what their experience is, because very often their lived experience is different from,
Yes, we need it witnessing and validating.
and they just need someone to be curious. Tell me more. Tell me about that. And to really just listen, because we can learn a lot from them. They often come into the world with, the sensitive children come in with more knowing. They're come in with, their veil is thin. They haven't they haven't forgotten everything, and they can teach us and help us. We have all the programming, they don't. And they're really a gift for us if we take the time to listen to what they've come here to teach us.
Yeah, the light's very bright and it's very attractive. It's really interesting. You know, within our family, we've got it on both sides of the coin. We've got some family members and distant cousins that have been diagnosed with autism and have really benefited from the label because they got the help support through education, have been able to, in one case, been able to stay in a normal school, in another case, gone into a specialist school, and both children have really excelled and are really doing well with the additional support and understanding. You know, whereas I think I've experienced the opposite, where somebody tries to label when there isn't that situation, and actually finding, actually, no, my daughter's a high achiever. And when they actually tested her, Samia, they found that she was very highly intelligent and that actually was scoring above normal averages for her age range, and that she was just perceiving information and remembering it in quite a lot of detail. So she's very into the detail and very deep processing, has all those sensitivity traits. And I think, you know, you're right. In society, we label things and what is normal, what is right, what is wrong. But unfortunately, what has happened in your situation is that this lovely girl, Maisa, who is creative, sensitive, beautiful, has felt blocked, ignored perhaps a little bit, not by family, but perhaps by members within their schooling. The qualities and gifts that she's brought aren't always recognized, and perhaps she's felt, you know, confused because the signals that other people are responding to are different to the ones that she's perceiving and receiving. And I think sensitive children and perceive more, don't they? They're feeling into the world, and so they're getting information that we don't see with the human eyes, and often more accurate information than we see with the human eyes, because they're seeing from a soul level. And often is where the truth is, that, you know, you can walk into a room, somebody could be smiling and laughing, but if you feel, "Ooh, there's an argument that's gone on in here, the atmosphere doesn't feel right," but everybody's trying to fake it, they're masking it. A sensitive child, just like you're saying about Maisel, will see right through it. They'll get to the point and they'll know, no, this doesn't feel right. Something else has gone on in this room and I can recognize, and then it won't take them long to work out what it is. Whereas other people might be completely, you know, aware of that situation. So it it's quite a talent, but it's a very difficult situation to deal with. You know, do you think if you'd have had a bit longer, doctors would have been able to support a little bit more Samia, that they just needed more time with her to kind of understand what was happening with her? Or do you think society just wasn't equipped to deal with what you were being presented with? Do you think more research and work needs to go in this area?
I mean, there needs to be a lot more research. Historically, most research on autism has included it's mostly been boys. Has not been a lot of research on that's included females or adults, and there needs to be a lot more research. Until, I mean, and used to be you couldn't diagnose autism and ADHD together. That's only been since 2013.
How old is the research, full stop, Samia? Is it
Maybe since 1943.
80, 90 years perhaps? It's relative, in the scheme of things, it's relatively new.
It is new, and yes, it's new, and it's misunderstood, and it's also historically been understood through how somebody else has perceived autism, and then not at all for someone like me or Mesa and how our internal experience is. I don't think someone would look at me from the outside and say, "Oh, this person is behaving this way." I mask. And so my experience is largely internal. And that is
If you had to do that all your life, Samia, it must be exhausting.
that it is. And that's what leads to the mental health issues, is having to pretend, having to show up as what society tells you you're supposed to be. And that's the hard part. And that's not being able to be your authentic self. having to be something that you're not, having the world tell you what you're supposed to be. And everyone should be able to be who they are, no matter who, every individual. You shouldn't have an identity imposed upon you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So poor Mesa takes her life, and it must be absolutely horrific as a mum. You've gone through all this pain of trying to get help, and even with all the resources at your fingertips, the worst thing happens. Take me on the journey, Samir, and how have you managed to cope? It sounds like you've thrown yourself into education and really gone to get as much knowledge as you can to understand. And it sounds to me like you've come to a place of understanding. You're clear on why it's happened. You realize what, and there's always more than one contributory factor, isn't there? Let's be honest. There's always
Yes,
more.
suicide is complex. There's a lot, I believe, that we don't understand about suicide. I believe there's a physiological component also that we don't understand. Yes.
And so tell me what it's like afterwards. So you've gone through all this before. So for me, I'm thinking to myself, gosh, you've got quite a lot of grief before she's even transitioned. So you've been running at 100 miles an hour, trying to save your daughter and to get her the help and support that she needs. You're jumping through hoops. You're trying to open doors. You're trying to talk to the right therapists, the right doctors, the right teachers. Everybody's got a different story. Everybody's got a different perception. It's not ticking the boxes. You're not getting the answers that you need. And then the situation arises and suddenly you're thrown into this complex grief situation. You've now got to comprehend the uncomprehendable. Were you just numb? Did you just kind of collapse? How did you manage it, Sammy? Because it's clear to me that you've never had to deal with this kind of situation in your life before. Is that right?
No, no, not like this.
Where did you go for help? What did help look like, or did you just surrender to the experience to start with? Because some people
Yeah,
just go numb, don't they? Some people just need a period of being on their own and need to process it in their own way.
I was in shock. And I will say that I knew immediately that I had help and that she was with me and that there was something more happening.
What were your insights on that, Samir? Was it just an internal knowing, or were there things actually happening around you and you were like, that's tangible?
There were things happening around me. I was spiritual before. I'm a yoga teacher, and I had finished my yoga teacher training on 2/22/22. We're right before then, 2/22/22 in Teotihuacan, Mexico. Came back, thought I was at the pinnacle of my, healing and spiritual path and enlightenment. And then, of course, that's when everything began.
Well, wow. So in a way, almost brought into your life as a way of coping, perhaps even. You've got this experience in terms of yoga, something that's very grounding, helps you move energy. So you've learnt this before the start of the situation that you're about to walk into. That's incredible. So almost like preparation in a way from a soul point.
Yes, but there was more before then. On 220, I finished my yoga teacher training, and then on 2/22/22, I had a biopsy and I had a breast cancer diagnosis that I navigated the year before Masa's suicide attempt. So then, like, that kind of opened me more, a little bit more. And then everything with Mesa, like, these things are
Yeah.
the things that, like, are really opening me more to spirit. So the morning of her transition happened to do this meditation on my own, like this grounding cord meditation that I remember doing where I felt very connected. And in retrospect, I realized, they were helping me. I was being protected for what I was about to walk into. And I know that there were energies with me and that she was with me, walking me through what was happening that day, even though I was in shock. And I knew immediately that she was going to help me find people and things that would help me survive what I was going to need to survive. And so far, she has. And she is showing me the ways that she's still here, and she's still Mesa. She's just more and different. And it has been a journey of learning a new language of how to communicate with her and how to mother a child in spirit, or more accurately, be mothered by a child in spirit who's not really a child. She's not a child. And kind of move through, while also moving through the trauma and the immense grief of not having that human experience of the child, the human Mesa here with me. It's kind of like a dual track of, the grief and the awe. And yeah, it's a journey. It's a
Yeah, it's really hard, isn't it?
spiral.
It's really hard. I mean, I think you're very fortunate that you had that spiritual element to you, and you did find some incredible people around you, and we've witnessed ourselves, Maisa, coming through in different circles and activities, and she's very vocal. She's very alive and very vocal, and she's very strong opinions on certain things. She makes those opinions now. It's kind of really interesting, isn't it? Because here we are, we're grieving the physical, but we've got the joy of this spiritual experience and the growth that comes out of these things. We've heard in other podcasts that as we've talked to people talking about the amount of growth and accelerated growth that's come out of this situation, and that although it still hurts not to have the loved one in the physical, that actually the bravery and the kind of responsive, the continued communication and the continued relationship through spirit and consciousness means that that love has a place to go, and we get this sense and feeling of them around us, and that can be very comforting. And it can be highly inspirational as well. You're an incredible writer. I know that you channel, and you've got a lovely blog that you started, when Mesa transitioned. And I've read pieces of that work, and I find it very beautiful and inspiring. And I like that insight into your mind and the way that you perceive things. But it's taken time, hasn't it? It's taken time to cultivate. And how are you feeling 2 years into it, Samia? And if somebody was listening and they think, oh my gosh, I've just lost somebody under the same circumstances, very similar journey to the one that you've walked, what would you recommend or give them as top tips to kind of consider that would maybe make their lives easier or help them in the way that you've been helped by spirit?
I mean, just breathe. It's for someone in the very beginning, all you can do is just breathe and be in the moment. It's really just surviving one moment, and then the next moment, and then the next moment, and not worrying too much about anything that's too far in the future. And honestly, I still live my life like that. And that's kind of the best way, I think, for anyone to live, because if you start worrying too much about the future, that's I think where anxiety lives, and worrying same thing about the past. And the present moment is where life is for anyone. And like that's what's happening now. And I know for a lot of parents who have children in spirit, we get really stuck in the moment that they transition to spirit. Of course, because that is a big moment of shock and trauma, and we stay there. We do need to process that, but that's one moment. And all that they were and are. And Mesa had this wonderful 14 years on earth with me, and she's this vast, amazing soul. And she's here right now helping me do this and channeling words through me and helping me deliver, hopefully, some words that will help somebody somewhere. She's not that moment that she transitioned to spirit. She's so many other things.
That's so important. Actually, so many people get stuck in that moment. You're absolutely right, and live it in repetition and can't move beyond that into the now. And that can be in some instances, I've seen that in many years later, they're still reliving, beyond the 2 years that you've gone through this process. I've met people at 5 years and 10 years still going through this moment, and the spirit world saying, stop. stop. That moment is has passed. Now you're in this moment. Look at this moment. It is so key. What you're saying is so relevant, Samia. It's so key, and it affects so many people, not just through the suicide communities. I have to say that, yeah, I've met people from cancer communities, people who have had accidents, accidental overdoses. Every situation, it's not predictable, Samir. It flows through all different circumstances, and I think it's a really relevant point that you're making. Sometimes, actually, what I would share with the viewers that from my perspective, is sometimes there's trauma before grief. And sometimes in order to process the grief, you have to first process and manage the trauma, because the trauma doesn't allow you to meet grief. And you've got to meet grief with open arms and welcome it in, because that grief is the love that you feel for that loved one that is not realized or recognized in that moment. And so you have to deal with the trauma. And there's lots of different ways that we can do that. We can do EMDR, we can do hypnosis, dissociation techniques, we can learn relaxation, we can learn how to manage the breath. We talked about breath work. Yoga is very good, restorative yoga or hatha yoga that's very gentle. Lying in nature, walking in nature, finding artistic ways to express, whether that's writing it all down and journaling it, or whether it's drawing and illustrating, depending. Some people turn to music, depends what your talent and what your skills are. Or, it doesn't even have to be something that you did before. Maybe it becomes a new skill because you try it. I've seen people do beautiful mosaics that have never done mosaics before, or become absolutely fascinated with art in nature, creating things. But these things come out of this space, and they are things that can help us move through it, isn't it? Did you experience some trauma?
I mean, I don't know how you could go through something like this and not be traumatized. Yes, absolutely. I did some EMDR, a lot of breath work, yoga, time in nature, and yes, I think you absolutely need to work through the trauma.
Were you doing trauma work alongside grief work as well? Because you did quite a
Yes,
lot of work, didn't you? You did a lot of therapy work and worked with grief specialists. And
yes.
I met you about maybe a year into that work when you'd already actually done a lot of the therapy work. Wow, incredible, incredible story, and I mean, it's an incredibly sad story, but it's also incredibly inspiring because I've seen how full of life she is and full of joy. And I do think she's really intelligent, Samir. And I think there's so many parents, or, not even parents, people that have experienced other loved ones that have transitioned in this way, that will empathize and recognize a lot of their story in yours. And even sometimes realizing that you're not alone, and that somebody else has, it won't be identical, this story, but there'll be elements of it that will resonate with people. And sometimes hearing somebody's story can be really, really helpful, even though it's a hard subject to talk about sometimes, isn't it? It's difficult. And I think in society, we tend to want to ignore it or not talk about it. And that's why we're here doing the absolute opposite, talking about it so that we can share with people. It's very normal. It's very normal, sadly, in our society. It's a high percentage of people that experience these types of situations, and I meet them nearly every day. So I know the community that we're servicing and kind of the situations that can evolve. So wow, amazing, Samia. What's next for you on your journey? Where do you think it's going to take you next? What are your thoughts 2 years in, and where do you see Mesa's journey and sort of inspiration taking you?
I hope to continue working with Mesa and spirit and advocating for sensitive children like her and trying to make the world a better, more accommodating place.
Well, that's really beautiful. I like the word accommodating. Really key, isn't it? It's really key. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you. I know it's really hard, and I just can't thank you enough for sharing your journey. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you. I know you as a very beautiful soul. I know you as a very kind, loving. It is hard when we talk about a different subject, but I see you. You do experience joy. You experience a lot of inspirational words and wisdom in the group, in our circle. I always find you a very kind, loving soul who's very giving. You're a good listener of others. I think we all get excited when we get good messages. And I feel that your connection is really, really good, and it's improved massively in the last I'd say in this term, I've really sort of been like, "Wow," like, move over the cat because Sammy is there, and some of the detail though is I think people need to realise that sometimes, it is a journey. At the beginning, you might only pick up a little bit, but now you're getting to a stage where you're getting real good evidence coming through, and the threads of what other people are picking up as well are really, really fabulously strong. So it it takes discipline, doesn't it? It takes stamina, it takes time, but that can open up a whole new array of experiences that are really beautiful. So almost a collateral beauty coming out of this difficult situation and knowing her in a different way. The one thing I think of in terms of my own loved ones and spirits, I get to spend every day with them now. And in life, we would have all gone different ways and different directions and had our own experiences. So in a kind of selfish way, there is a silver lining, if you will, of getting to spend more time spiritually with your loved one because their soul presence is easy to access every day. And I feel that love can hold to us. So yeah, it's a journey, isn't it? It's a difficult journey, but there can also be a lot of exciting, inspirational things that can come up out of these experiences. Do you think you'll do any work changing laws and legislation, Samia, or doing public speaking on the subject? Because clearly you articulate yourself very well when you talk about labeling and the plight of a sensitive child. Do you think how do you feel, in terms of that piece of work of kind of changing people's perception? What's that going to look like?
Sure, what that's gonna look like. I feel like there are a lot of systems that aren't working currently that need to be dismantled, and I'm not sure exactly what that looks like. And I listen closely to Mesa's guidance and take the next aligned step and the next aligned step and see where that leads me.
Do you think you'll ever use your yoga to work with sensitive children or children in these kind of communities? Do you think you'll use some of your practical skills?
I would love to do that because I think that helping sensitive children listen to their bodies and their own internal compass and their wisdom that's here is a key piece of this because they're told often by the outside world what they think and feel, and having them learn to tune in is very necessary. I would love to help kids learn how to listen to the wisdom of their bodies.
Their own inner voice. How beautiful. Thank you. Well, Sammy, it's been lovely to have you. Thank you for coming and sharing your story. You're an inspiration. I really appreciate you. And I wish you all the luck. I hope you continue to strive and get stronger and stronger. And I just know that you're going to help many, many, many people. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me and for being part of my journey. I appreciate you.
Take care. Thank you.